Today I'm going to cover why trap drums might be ruining your beats. If you're using trap drums for every single beat that you make, you might be doing your beats a disservice. Trap drums can be great, there's nothing wrong with trap drums, I want to start by saying that, but they might not be the right choice depending on the beat that you make, and I want to cover exactly why in this video. I think it's going to be helpful to look at this from two different perspectives. We have the aesthetic perspective as well as the technical perspective. Let's start off with the aesthetic, it's a bit more straightforward to understand. Let's take a listen to this beat that I'm in the process of building right now. By the way, if you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing. It's easy to do and it really does help me out. And if you ever get tired of my videos, it's really easy to unsubscribe. Now with this beat going in, my intention was to make something that sounds a bit lo-fi, maybe a bit old school in its aesthetic. You can hear from the instrumentation that I chose, we have very organic, lush sounds with the Fender Rhodes, the guitar, the electric bass, which all fits into the aesthetic that I'm currently trying to build. Now, one thing that I commonly see is that when producers are in this type of situation, they'll end up doing everything right up to this point. They choose all the right sounds, they process them in a way that fits a very particular aesthetic, but as soon as they get to their drums, they just tend to throw all of that out the window. And they just use trap drums and build a trap drum pattern like so. Now, if you watched my video on lo-fi beats and the mistakes that I commonly see there, you know why this might not be the best choice. Drums are just as important as any of the other instruments when you're trying to build a very particular aesthetic. So if you're building a beat that's supposed to sound more old school and you choose all the right instruments except for the drums and you just do whatever you want with your drum choice, this can end with some pretty bad results. And obviously a quick caveat here, I'm not saying that you have to avoid using trap drums. There's obviously something to be said about genre blending and exploring new musical territory. But the point I'm trying to make here is mainly directed towards producers who are trying to build very specific genres of beats, but fail to consider any of these ideas as soon as they get to their drums. Be cognizant of what types of drums fit each aesthetic. I have a video outlining this very idea right above my head if you need some help understanding some of the different choices that you can make. With this beat here, if I did choose drums that do fit the genre that I'm trying to pursue, and I chose more old school sounding drums like these ones here, this is going to go a long way in helping me build an old school beat that actually sounds old school. So that's one side of the argument, which is the aesthetic side. Let's take a look at the technical side of things and why trap drums might not be the right choice for your beat. Here I have yet another idea that I'm building. Let's take a listen. So let's say after I build this loop, I get the idea in my head that I want to make something that's a bit more minimal, more open and spacious. And I want my drums to reflect that. I want to do my best in keeping this beat feeling open and yet still feel complete and full. Now let's compare. Here I've chosen these drums and built this drum pattern out in order to pursue this idea of open yet complete. These drums do a pretty good job. They make the beat feel full yet open. Now let's hear how this exact same beat would sound with this exact same drum pattern, but with trap drums instead. So obviously here this beat just does not feel quite as full or complete. These trap drums are just not doing a good job of filling up space in my beat. If I did want to make this beat feel more full, I would likely have to start playing with the drum pattern itself and create something like this. But at this point, we start to lose that sense of openness. You can see here, trap drums might not be the best choice if we consider what our original intention was with this beat. And technically speaking, it's going to be pretty simple to understand why. Trap drums are very flexible and you can create some pretty wild patterns with them. The reason why they're so flexible is because the sounds themselves are not very prolonged. They are very transient sounds that only last a very short amount of time. For example, if we were to compare how long each snare lasts literally in terms of time, we can see that the original snare that I chose is just longer. So it's going to be easier using these types of prolonged sounds to get the beat to feel more full. With trap drums, it's easier to use them in a very elaborate and intricate way when you're building out your drum patterns to fill up your beat. If you've ever tried to make stuttering hi-hats and crazy snare rolls using non-trap drums, you can quickly tell it becomes a lot harder to do so in a balanced way. Trap drums are just great when you want to do these types of techniques. But with every pro, there's always going to be a con. It's a double-edged sword in a way, because you will basically need to create something more elaborate and intricate in order to fill up your beat when you use trap drums. Using them somewhat minimally like we tried to do here will most likely not be enough to make your beat sound complete. Now, if you don't understand how important this is, let me explain this in a different way. Let's say you were building a fence between you and your neighbor because you needed privacy. But when you chose the wood to build it, you didn't do a good job in choosing the right wood for the job, wood that covers enough space. You instead choose this thin wood here that has a bunch of space in between. So even though you wanted to build a fence, and technically you did here, it's not the right fence for what you wanted, which is to keep your business private from your neighbor. Let's think about what's going to happen now. One day you're going to be in your backyard sunbathing in the nude because that's how you get your thrills. Your neighbor, who's a pervy Pete, comes along and takes a look at what you're doing, and he sees you there in all your glory. And what he does after that is he starts telling everyone in the neighborhood about your body parts and the various sizes of your anatomy. You wanted privacy, but you didn't get any because you didn't choose the right material for your fence. The same way how you made a beat and you wanted it to feel full, but you didn't choose the right material to get that job done either. And so this is what's going to happen when you use trap drums in every beat. Everyone in the neighborhood's going to know you got a pet worm. So space is one important factor that you need to consider. Also, trap drums are much less textured and rich in their character, so that will make it harder for us to make a beat like this feel a lot more full with a minimal drum pattern. With this snare here, you can see I did some pretty unique sliding using this texture. And this worked because this snare is literally long in terms of how much time it lasts, as well as it's very rich in color. It has a lot of character. You can easily hear this, whereas if I wanted to do a cool technique like this with a trap drum, if I tried to add a slide here, yeah, it's just not going to work out. So hopefully you're starting to see why using trap drums with every single beat that you make may not be the best choice. I made a similar video to this covering 808s and why they aren't the best choice if you use them in every single beat as well. And this is just something that I commonly see because I think what's happening is that a lot of you guys might have just started and trap beats were your introduction into music production, and you might not have experience using other types of sounds, which is ultimately my goal with this video, just to show you some of the other possibilities and ideas outside of what you may be used to and out of your own comfort zone. So if you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Head over to betterbeatmaker.com if you want some more advanced production tips and techniques. Down in the description box below is a link to my free drum kit, as well as a link to the Discord if you want to join my producer community, and I will see you guys later.